Life is an unfoldment, and the further we travel, the more truth we can comprehend. I recently read this quote by a Greek philosopher named Hypatia, and it got me thinking about my entire journey as a software engineer. What truth have I really learned? What do I know now that I wish I knew back then? And if I could go back, what kind of advice would I give to my younger self? So through my reflection, I boiled down to about 5 things that I wish I knew before starting this career. And today, I wanted to share them with you. Do hard things. The single best thing you can do for your career is also the one you'll instinctively want to run from. In most cases, our brain is usually wired to seek comfort and rest, but this instinct is actually the enemy of growth. For the first few years in my career, I actually got this completely wrong. I chased the feeling of productivity and not actual progress. Oftentimes, I used to just stack my days with easy wins, simple bugs, fixes, minor UI tweaks, and just the kind of tasks that I knew I could close out in a few hours. Honestly, it felt pretty good to be able to clear out a bunch of tasks and easy wins, but in all honesty, I wasn't getting any stronger in reality. I was just treading water in the shallow end, completely avoiding the deep end where the real growth happens. For me, the real leaps in my career actually came from the moments of significant discomfort. I still remember the first time I was asked to lead a major company priority. We call them Zuck projects actually. And this genuinely terrified me. This project was one of those can't fail projects because at the end of the day, this was going to be demoed to millions of people live during Connect, which is our annual conference. And my first instinct when I was offered to lead this project was actually to try to find a way out of it. But in the end, I kind of recognized the opportunity and I didn't. I just went forward. One thing from one of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday, writes in his book, The Obstacle is the Way. The impediment to action actually advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That project wasn't an obstacle in front of my career. It was actually the path forward and to get to the next level. The very thing that I was trying to avoid was actually holding the lessons that I needed. Honestly, it was actually really painful and a very tough project to finish. But in the end, it was the single best project that I led and made the biggest impact in my growth as an engineer. So if you remember one thing from this video, I actually think this lesson of doing hard things is probably the most important. Lesson 2, aim for the best. So once you start embracing doing hard things, the next very obvious question is, where do you find the hardest and most impactful problems to solve? And this kind of leads to the second thing that I wish I knew sooner in my career, and that is aim for the best. And in this case is aiming to work at a top tier tech company as early as possible. Honestly, this isn't really about the prestige or anything about working at these top tech companies, but there's many aspects to working at a top tier tech company. For example, just trying to get into a FAANG level company itself is doing hard things. So that's like, the lesson 1. And preparing for those interviews forces you to grow as an engineer quite a lot. But the real secret of working for the best or working at the best companies, it's really the talent density. The amount of brilliant engineers and colleagues that you'll meet and learn from is dramatically different at top tier tech companies. And there's this one saying where that you're actually the average of 5 people that you spend the most time with. And because we work so much in our life, you actually end up mimicking a lot of what your colleagues end up doing. I remember when I first joined Meta, the code reviews were brutal. I had very senior engineers. They used to pick apart everything from my code, from small nits to large refactors, teaching me design patterns. And there was just so much that I had to learn just to get up on the par. I had already passed the interviews, but working here and performing well was like a whole nother level. But yeah, you may come here, spend weeks on a feature, and you might be proud of the work, but a principal engineer would leave 50 comments or something, showing you how it could really be done simpler, faster, and even more scalable. These things could be soul crushing at first, but I realized that I was getting better and better, and I was essentially getting a masterclass of writing great code for free. You simply can't help but get better when you're in this kind of environment where the standards are just so high. Essentially, the current is so strong at these top tier tech companies that it will just pull you along right to the top, or you'll sink. So yeah, I would say aiming for the best and working at the best place is something that I wish I learned sooner and got to quicker. Now, the next thing that I wish I learned earlier is actually around communication. Communication is your most powerful tool. So when you're surrounded by this kind of top tier talent, one of the really interesting truths that I learned is that the highest impact engineers, or just people in general, aren't always like the best coders. They're actually the best communicators. This is essentially the third thing that I wish I had understood from day one. I used to believe in the myth of like this like lone genius, you know, the rock star engineers, that if I just wrote brilliant code day in and day out, my work would essentially speak for itself. And this was kind of a huge mistake. Over the years, I've seen incredible technical ideas essentially die before they got off the ground because the engineers behind them couldn't really get anyone to understand why it mattered. They'd write, you know, essentially like 20-page design docs that no one really might read. They didn't do a good job of socializing it or bringing teams along for the journey. They didn't really know how to talk up or down or across to really sell their ideas. So it might sound really unfair or very annoying that these like great, amazing engineers with great technical skills might not have their ideas listened to. But I learned that the onus of getting people to respect your ideas and really be passionate about your idea is on the engineer itself. They really need to make sure that people who need to be convinced hears their ideas clearly and strongly, and they essentially are on board with the changes that you want to make. Honestly, I feel like this is a really important lesson to learn because, in my opinion, the hardest problems that you will end up solving can rarely be solved alone. You have to get people to believe in your vision and coordinate complex work across teams. What that means is you need to learn how to explain a complex technical trade-off to non-technical product managers, for example. Or can you convince a room of senior engineers or staff engineers that your approach is the right one? And fundamentally, at its core, all of this thing is essentially the art of storytelling. If you think you're just a tech person, I promise you that you will hit a ceiling if you don't really master this art. Mastering the art of communicating and storytelling, in my opinion, is the single most leveraged skill that you will learn in your career. So learn it, practice it, and master it, and you can thank me later. Now, the fourth thing that I wish I knew earlier is finding your crew. For the past 5 years that I've been an engineer, I've actually been in the same crew. I've had the same directors. I had multiple team changes and project changes, but I've had the same leadership that I've been reporting to. And this is my crew. And I have a bunch of other very senior ICs that I've been working together, and I feel very comfortable reaching out to all of my colleagues and friends, essentially. And this is actually the fourth lesson. Finding your crew is essentially finding a group of people that is extremely strong and that you can be loyal to. You see, earlier in my career, I thought that you had to be loyal to a company, but it took me about 5 years to realize that loyalty shouldn't really go to a company, but it should go to people. You know, layoffs can happen at any time. The company could go up and down, business needs could change, but a strong professional relationship and a network of people that you can trust can really last your entire career. So the current group of people that I trust completely, we've gone through the trenches together across different teams, different orgs. You know, we worked on Reels, we worked on Meta AI, we worked on Threads now. And recently, I just came to a realization that this psychological safety that comes from having people that has your back essentially is priceless. The thing is, a good manager or good leadership can make or break your experience at work. If you have full trust in the people that you work with, you can, for example, speak very clearly. Say things like, I don't know, or I messed up, without fear of judgment. And I remember now that I was able to push through those difficult things, you know, do hard things or make like controversial changes and really push through those, even though they were really risky and maybe against kind of the grain of some of the other engineers. I was able to go through with them because I had conviction, but I also knew that my leadership had faith in me and would back me up if something failed or something went wrong. And this is what I mean about that psychological safety and how valuable it actually is, because it really allows you to take big swings that can essentially define your entire career. In my opinion, the best career move that I did wasn't really optimizing for projects, but it was optimizing for these people. So find your crew. Now, working with a great crew makes the work essentially sustainable, but they can't really protect you from burnout all the way. And if you don't protect yourself, it's gonna be a big issue. And this is kind of the fifth and final thing that I wish I knew earlier in my career. And that is, your career is a marathon. So in my 20s, I thought I was basically invincible. I had high energy, I ran on caffeine basically. I ignored my posture and treated my sleep as an optional activity in a sense. I thought grinding was a badge of honor. I wish I could go back and tell myself that the bill for neglecting your body in your 20s actually comes due when you're in your 30s. The chronic back pain from hunching over my laptop, the brain fog from sleeping, only 5 hours at night, all of this catches up to you. And ergonomics, exercise, and sleep aren't just like a wellness advice that I give to people, but in my opinion, they're critical for professional longevity. For your career, your ability to think clearly is essentially a primary asset as an engineer. And if you're in constant pain, or you're tired, or you have like lower back pain from all of the bad years of not taking care of yourself and overworking, then your operating capacity eventually just goes down. Your body is essentially the one tool that you can't replace. So if you want to have a long, fulfilling career, you have to treat your body well early. Now these days, this is always at top of mind. So I have a standing desk, I have a really nice chair from Herman Miller, I have a house gym, as I mentioned, and I try to make sure to turn off work during family time. So things still get intense at times at work, but I always try to get back into this healthy and maintainable state. So there you have it. These are my 5 things that I wish I understood on day 1. Do hard things, aim for the top, master your communication, find your crew, and play the long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint after all. So I hope you guys enjoyed these quick lessons. I did this video, I think 5 or 4 years ago. And looking back now, after I was kind of preparing for this video, I realized how different those ideas were. Honestly, I feel like I grew a lot just from those 5 years and reflecting now, and kind of the quality of the things that I wish I knew. And that's why I do think, going back to the original quote of this video, life is really an unfoldment, and the further we travel, the more truth we can comprehend. Until I see you guys on the next one, bye.